So for our final lightning talk today, we have a talk about the Pompeii Quadriporticus Project, an archaeological project. Talking to us today, we have Eric Poehler, who's an assistant professor of classics at UMass Amherst.
Thanks. Let's see. So I'm going to talk to you very briefly today about 4 years of work on an archaeological project that has now completed its fieldwork component, and as anybody who's ever worked on any kind of project knows, becomes the real work of publishing and getting all the information that's historic and meaningful out of it. So that was the easy, fun part. The hard part comes next. The project, let me go back here a second. The project is dedicated to the architectural analysis of one of the oldest buildings in the excavations of Pompeii. It was excavated in 1763, which makes it now technically slightly more modern than it ever was ancient. It was built, it existed for about 240 years in the ancient world. It has now existed for over 252 in the modern world. So that means that we have a much different kind of project, one that is both archaeological of the deep past and one that is archaeological of the kind of the recent past, and we have to be responsible for both of those stories. We've also had a large responsibility we've taken on to be non-invasive, to try to figure out the fullest extent of information you can squeeze out of an ancient space without putting a trowel in the ground, with doing as little harm to the archaeology as possible. We've used a number of tools to do that. Oops, see, that's the button problem. Thanks for starting that off, by the way. You are a trailblazer, leading us all into good hands here. We used a number of technologies. The first one that we used, and I'll come back to this in a minute in more detail, was the iPad. I show you a picture of a wall because the iPad helped us document a piece and stretch of masonry that otherwise would take us many, many more hours to do. We were able to do it with far greater clarity and efficiency. We also used laser scanning. We set up in our building, well, I guess they're all going to come through now. We set up in our building a laser scanner that allowed us to capture the entire about 5,000 square meters of space of this building, an incredibly large area to think about documenting, and so a laser scanner was a very efficient way to do that. We also then had the opportunity to use ground-penetrating radar to peek below the ground to see what was there in those years before the building itself and what may have happened during the building's life. And down here, we've had the opportunity to use photogrammetry to stitch photos together and to create three-dimensional images of the spaces that we work in. Let me just quickly go through a couple of examples of that. With laser scanning, what you're seeing here is obviously a nice, clear digital image of black and white image of a wall, when in fact it is a pointillist picture of a wall. You're looking at quite genuinely tens, if not hundreds of thousands of measurements that are representing the space of an ancient place. Why do we care to have the ancient world recorded with such fidelity? We care because this will not always be with us. That Vesuvius is an active volcanic environment, and it may even be in our lifetimes that we lose this archaeological research, this resource. So the research we do now has great impact on what we know about our past in the near future. We can add these things meaningfully together. With our laser scanner and our ground-penetrating radar, we're able to layer deeply, not just vertically, but vertically into the vertically kind of up, but vertically into the ground as well, and get slices through the past. That is, on one part, our kind of modern history, our ancient history, and our very ancient history, going straight through that. We also have photogrammetry. And Jeffrey, how do I get this to click? Can I get this to go out if I do that? No.
No, you can't.
All right. Go to our website and watch this thing go spin around, okay? It's very, very cool. It's very cool not just because it's very cool to look at. It's very cool because what it does is it takes what is otherwise a folder of 70, 80 images and combines them into one image that allows you to use all that data and all the information, every piece of historical activity that's recorded in those images, and to live inside of it, to move it and manipulate it in ways that are deeply intuitive, and to inhabit the space in ways you can't do with a Windows or Mac folder or Finder folder. We use the iPad to incredible effect to have on board a database and also a drafting program that helped us record in great detail, very cleanly and very efficiently, the information that we, as professors, as grad students, as undergraduate students, as Five College Postbacks came and studied the ancient world, put it into our database, and now we have a great record of that. We also then recorded the the images as well, drawing over a digital image in a manner that took something like if it took us 4 hours to draw this wall in previous kind of analog technologies, it takes us about 25 with a student who's good at what she's doing. That meant that we were able to do an archaeological project in 4 years, and really in 3, that would have taken us 10 years in the past or more to do. One of the main reasons why this building had probably never been touched for the 250 years of its history, even though almost every person who ever visited Pompeii went through it, is the simple monumental task of studying a monumental building. We also then studied the 74 columns that ring this building, examining each one of these columns for the holes that you see, for the location of the plaster, for the cracks. All of those things that now have given us an opportunity to realize that what looks like, what is clearly the most iconic element of classical architecture, and what in a row seems to be the most permeable of architectures, is in fact often closed and fixed, that it actually prevents movement and allows vision. So it is not, in fact, what we expect. That's a kind of a very fun project I can't really get into right now. Let me tell you very, very quickly some of the results, because this is really fun too. Over these 4 years, we had an opportunity to piece this together, to actually go from having a building and understanding what that looked like in its origins and how that built up over time, to the end point when the building will radically change and become something different in the ancient world for the Romans who are going to inhabit it. Those 200 years meant something very different. But it's really hard to say what happened in those intervening 200 years between original idea and radical transformation. Our project has begun to actually begin to make those changes and see the life of a building over time. Our work, particularly on the digital side, allowed us to capture tons of information. Here you see the building in its kind of wider context, and maybe hopefully you can see the little blue lines. Each of these blue lines is one of the 255 blue lines walls that our students measured up to 3 times to get what we call metrological information. Whether or not this wall, when you divide it against the foot that the Romans had, or the foot that the people who preceded them, the Oscan-speaking Samnite peoples who preceded them, whether they measures out to one of their feet. And here you can see blue all around the outsides of the building where the original Oscan foot is still in place, and filling in where the Romans took over in the middle with their slightly longer Roman foot. This fills out to be really interesting patterns going back to this Oscan, that not only are there measures, but these measures are incredibly meaningful to the architect who put them together. There are, for small numbers, really a lot of these favorites. Prime numbers show up again and again and again. When you get into larger numbers, they start to like these base. This looks like you'll have to explain this in a minute, but looks like they're using a lot of base 9 as kind of their overall unit. One of those great base 9s is we discovered that there's a 90-foot segment here from the edge of the building, to a major dividing wall. In 2013, we discovered that there was another one that ran right to this point here. We then got out our protractors and realized that if we extended the wall of the fortification wall of the city, it would probably hit right about here as well, looking like we're starting to decode the underpinnings of the architectural design of this building. But we thought, let's go north. Let's see what's there. And again, we find another 90-foot unit sitting right here in the post-skylight area of the theater. And even once more, as we go up to the theater, we see that the entrance to the theater itself is fitting onto this 90-foot plan. We're seeing that our building is not just built as part of a new thing for the people of Pompeii. It's part of a larger entertainment district that all comes in as a kind of a cultural package. And when you take that 90-foot unit and you turn it into the radius of a circle, it fits perfectly and dramatically into the cavea of the theater, showing us that all of this is all planned together at one moment. We're still just beginning to decode what this actually means, what all of this means as far as an overall package, but it's fascinating to work on, and I look forward to doing that. And again, like many of you, thank the 5 colleges for the great support, both monetarily and kind of enthusiastically, to do this work. So thank you very much.